Hello, so today we're going to be looking at swapping out a single socket like this for a new double one, or in this case an old double one that I got out of the kitchen. So you can see that we're going to need to dig a bigger hole in the wall and switch this one over. Things you're going to need, obviously you're going to need a new back box to go behind it. Pick this up from Screw Fix or something for next to nothing. You're going to need screwdriver, a drill with some masonry bits, and then probably some chisels and a hammer to start digging a hole. Various other bits and bobs that we'll come to. Now, first things first, this is electricity. Electricity is dangerous. Electricity will try and kill you if it can. So the first thing we want to do is we make sure this is completely dead before we do anything at all to it. And the best way to do that is by taking something that works, plugging it in. Now we check, and in this case it's a Hoover, we check that the thing works first of all. Okay, so that's working. So if I go and turn the power off now and try it again and it's not working, then chances are we've turned the power off. It's always worth having a double check. So let's go to the fuse box. So this is the fuse box. Now the first thing you need to do is to make sure everybody in the house knows what's happening. The last thing you want is some teenager to discover their phone charger is not working and come and switch the power back on again. So you need to make sure everyone knows. Now, you can't always trust these. It says on it what they are, but sometimes you find these are wrong, hence plugging something in to check it. In this case, I've got several sockets. One's marked sockets 2, I think that's the one, so we'll switch those off. We'll now go back and check that the Hoover doesn't work. So we're back again. Hoover's still plugged in. I'm switching the Hoover on and it's dead. So pretty much be sure now that that's a dead socket, so I can start doing something. So first things first, we take the screws out. There's one. And there's the other one. Now we can pull it out and we can look where the wires are. And in this case, the wires are coming from this bottom corner here. So now we take the new one, and we look on it for where the power connectors are. So in this case, I've got a live and a neutral here, and I've got an earth over here. Now what I need to make sure is that this fits. So these wires probably won't pull out any further. So I need to make sure that the wires are going to reach when I put this. So when I dig a hole in the wall, I want to make sure that it's in the right place for the wires to line up. So really, as the wires at that end, I'm going to be looking at something like that so that they can reach. Okay, so what I like to do before I do any electrics, I've got this little detector thing. I just like to double check, and it is in fact dead, so that's good. So we take the wires out. Now sockets will generally be on a ring, so there'll be 2 wires going to each. In this case, red and black. In a more modern house it'll be brown and blue. So red is always live, brown is live, and blue or black is neutral. And you'll have an earth as well, and the earth should be covered by some green and yellow sleeving, and it's important that that's there. If it's not there, then you've got a problem. You need to call an electrician to sort it out. So we'll take these out. So it's just a case of undoing the screws, like that, and these will then just pull straight out. Now try not to touch these wires together, because of you can basically cause the house to trip out. You can trip the rest of the circuit out. So even though they're dead, they'll still do that. So we'll just keep them apart from each other. 2 reds, 2 blacks, and an earth, which is actually 2 earths twisted together. Okay, so now I take the back box and I need to decide where it's going to go. And you can see there are holes that you can push through. So in this case, I'm going to push them through the second hole there, I think, and that should reach quite nicely. So all you do, take a screwdriver and you can push out that hole, and you can see, give it a wobble and it should come out. There we go. Now if I line that up, I can see where I'm going to dig the hole. The other thing you need to do is pick up some of these little grommets. You can get these from any electrical shop quite cheaply, and you put it in the hole that you've just made. And really it's just to protect the wires. If you've got a jagged edge there, the chances are you can cut through some wires. So I'll put that grommet on, make a nice job of it. So now the next thing to do is to push the wires back into the hole like that. Keep them away from each other so that we can then put this box where it's going to go. That needs to be lined up with there. We can get an idea of where we're going to put it. So the next thing to do, now ideally you'd put a spirit level on top of this to make sure it's level, but I'll position it here, and then we can take that level. We can take a Stanley knife and just mark the edges like this. There we go. You can see now where we're gonna put it. So I want to try and cut a hole here without doing too much damage to the plaster. If you take a straight edge, you can make these a little bit deeper. One there, one here. Now some plaster you'll be able to virtually cut through it. This is actually a render and it's absolutely rock solid, very difficult to deal with. So I'm going quite deep with this one. And again on the bottom. There we are. And now we can start to dig out. So I've just got a chisel here. Ideally I want more with a flat end, but I've lost that one. So you just take these now, and where the little marks that we've made are, you can just gently start to chop that plaster away. Now take your time here, because if you crack it too far out, it'll show beyond the sockets. The socket's got a little bit of an overlap, but not much. If you crack it there, you'll have to put some more plaster or some polyfiller in. So the more care you take here, the less of a problem it will be later on. Now sometimes, like this one, the plaster's been put over the top of the existing box, which is actually in really deep. So you'll need to crack the plaster away before you can take the old box off. Okay, so now I've dug that hole the same size as the box, and I've done exactly what I've said you shouldn't do, which is to break away the plaster on the outside. This stuff's absolutely rock hard. It's really hard to get it to work properly. I should perhaps have done some more digging with the Stanley knife, but there we are. Next thing, take the box with the grommet and I feed the wires through. Now again, there are two sets of wires here. I'm trying not to short them out, but it doesn't matter too much. If you do, it'll just trip out the breaker, which you can switch back on again later. So that's these wires through. So here we go, pushing the box in. You've got it right, it should fit in the hole. And there we are. And the wires are coming in nicely at the bottom, and they're not chafing on anything. Got this rubber grommet in the bottom. So there we are. We can wiggle it about a bit. Next thing we need to do is to fix it in place. So taking a small masonry drill bit that'll fit through the hole. What I'm going to do is make a pilot. Just making a pilot hole so that we can see where to drill. Okay, there's one there and one there. Now we can pop this back out again, hopefully. And we can drill, we can see where the holes are, and now we can drill some proper holes. So I've got a couple of raw plugs here, so I think these are around about 6 or 7 mil. And stick it onto hammer action. Now we can just drill out those holes. And then pop in your raw plugs. There we go. And then when we push this back on again, there he is. The holes all line up. Okay, so there it is. I can see the raw plugs through it. So that's good. We can then take a couple of screws, fit in the raw plugs, and we can screw it to the wall. And then the second one. And make sure it's all nice and firm, which it is. Now, because I've made a mess of the plaster, I'm going to fill in some of the gaps now with a bit of polyfiller. If you make a really bad job, you'll have to get some plaster. But yeah. There we go. Now you don't have to be too neat with this because you'll sand it down later. Just fill in most of the holes and then leave that to dry. And once it's dry, we can neaten it up a little bit. Okay, now then, because I've had to put some polyfill around, I need to leave it to dry, and that could take a couple of hours. So what I've done is put the old socket back on the wires so that I can turn the power back on, and then you just keep people away from this. It's not ideal, but the wires are protected because they're in the socket. Under no circumstances should you leave live wires sticking out and put the power back on. Just too dangerous. So like that, and then keep everyone out of the room while the polyfiller dries. Okay, so we're back here the next day. Plaster's dried, the polyfiller's dried. If you want this to happen really quickly, you can use car body filler, and it's dry in about half an hour. I use polyfiller, so I have to wait for a day. Now it's just a little bit around the edges, it's a little bit rough. Now I'm going to sand it with one of these. Now obviously this needs power. This is powered from a separate socket downstairs that's still live. This one is not live. Under no circumstances should you have live wires left sticking out here while you do it. If you really must use one of these and there's no other power, then you can fold these over, put tape round, and make sure they're completely isolated. But really, best thing is do not do it. If you haven't got power, just use a block and a bit of sandpaper. It doesn't take long, so we'll just go around this now. Good as new. Now we can stick the new socket on. Here's the new socket, and again you should find there's a live, a neutral and an earth. So earth really important, don't do without the earth. You've probably got two sets of wires. You'll have two reds, two blacks, or 2 browns and 2 blues, depending on how new your wiring is, and then 2 earth wires. Red to red, black to black, earth to earth, always the way. So we just stick these into the new socket now, and hopefully, because we measured it up before, we know that the wires are going to fit in, so they just go in the hole. So let's put in the, double check we've got the right ones. Live, you can see it says on live and neutral. Be careful about getting them the right way around. So live is on this side, so live goes in there. Neutral goes with the second one. Now we make sure the wires are all the way in, so there's no copper exposed. We do up the screw nice and tight so it's holding the wires, and then we give them a tug to make sure they're in tight. It's possible to do the screw up and the wires still be light if they go down the size of the screw, so make sure it's in there. So same again for the neutral, push those in, make sure there's no copper showing, and do up the screw. And again, give them a good tug. Finally, the earth, which goes in there. Check that. Now the earth should have some sleeving on it. If it doesn't, you can add your own bit of sleeving. You can buy it for next to nothing. But you want it to be covered up, otherwise you can have bare wires here and they're liable to short out on anything else that comes out, so worth covering them up. It's also, because it's green and yellow, you can tell exactly that that's an earth if it's been done properly. And then all we do is squeeze it in. If you lined it up properly, we should find that the wires fit nicely into the box, and then we pop the screws back in. This is often the hardest part, finding where the screws fit. So see if we can get it. Right, that one's in. And that one's in. Okay, that's the hard part done. Just do them up and we should be good to go. At this point, it's better to hold it in and then do up the screws than just to force the screws to do it up. That way, if you have trapped anything, then it's not going to cut through it. It'll just be much more difficult for that to happen. So there we go. And that's it. We just need to paint around that now with the right paint and it won't show. Okay, let's turn the power back on. One thing left to do, power's back on. We test it out, so we'll plug the Hoover in again and let's see if the Hoover works. There we go. Very convenient because I need the Hoover to clean up the mess now. All we need now, a bit of paint around the outside and that's job done. And that is how you change a plug from a single to a double. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.